Ukrainian analysts predict a Ukrainian army counteroffensive in the near future and the return of much of the territory currently controlled by the Russian army. This opinion is also shared by some American sources. At the same time, the Ukrainian General Staff keeps its plans secret, just as in the two previous cases when it carried out similar actions in Kherson and Kharkiv. Who would have doubted it? Earlier in the previous months, the Russian side had been gathering forces for an offensive and attempting to seize territory, mainly in the Donetsk region. They managed to take complete control of the town of Soledar, while fierce fighting is still going on in neighboring Bakhmut. But in fact, the Russian conquests in recent months are considered paltry in relation to the resources expended, both manpower and loss of military equipment. The failure in the key town of Uglida is extremely telling, as it is a railway junction. By controlling this city, the Russians could supply their army units located in Zaporizhia region, and in the southern part of Donetsk, Melitopol, and other places. However, the enemy not only failed to succeed, but also suffered significant losses. Much more significant losses were sustained in Bakhmut, this small town, which, however, has a special geography. It is divided by a river and has hills. From about the beginning of the siege of Bakhmut last summer, its capture was rather symbolic, as a show of strength, since the Russians probably intended to take the rest of the Donetsk region, moving from the town of Izium in the Kharkiv region. However, this entire region was liberated by the Ukrainian side, and today, in addition to propaganda and strategic planning, Bakhmut has taken on another meaning for the Russians. They have lost too much in that city, and they will have to justify those losses by continuing to attack the city. Therefore, they are constantly moving weapons and new soldiers there, either from the regular army or from the so-called Wagner group. Understanding Russia's decision to take the city at any cost, the Ukrainians decided to hold it for as long as possible, rather than moving their units elsewhere to protect them, as the Americans suggested. Therefore, today, the Russians are moving to Bakhmut those forces, which should be located to the south to retain control over the area in case of Ukrainians' advance to the Azov Sea. Before I continue, I ask you to subscribe to my channel, it will help promote it. There are three possible directions from which the Ukrainians could launch their future counteroffensive, which are the Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Lugansk directions. But no one can know what plans the General Staff has and what order they will give. With the great importance of Bakhmut, no counteroffensive will be attempted from this side. The main purpose of this counteroffensive will be to cut off Russian military forces further south and as far as Crimea from supply channels. At present, supplies are provided mainly through the Kerch Bridge, which the Russians built, but if fighting intensifies in these areas, the supply needs will be much greater and cannot be met in this way. Ukraine has indeed accumulated enough forces, domestically, that it can immediately use them for a counterattack. A very important factor is weather, which, on the one hand, will determine the timing of the counterattack and, on the other hand, may be different in the three directions where the counterattack may manifest itself. I hesitate to make any predictions as to when this counterattack may begin, but some analysts put it in the middle or end of spring. However, whatever successes the Ukrainians may have as a result of this counterattack will not be enough to end the war in 2023. Despite this, it is important to keep in mind the possibility of unexpected events or exceptions, often referred to as black swans. Counteroffensive by the AFU may begin in several directions at once or in one direction, only the Ukrainian General Staff knows for sure. But it is necessary to clarify a little the situation on the left bank of the Kherson region, and the possibilities in this particular direction. And at once I want to note that the situation there has a direct connection with events in the Zaporizhia region and will not develop by itself. To date, the group of Russian troops Dnieper has a numerical composition comparable to 100 battalion tactical groups. Their potential is 170 tanks, 570 armored fighting vehicles, 300 artillery pieces and 18 MLRS. These units have one of the largest understaffing in a number of positions in the combat zone. But at the same time, this group does not demonstrate any preparations to retreat. Moreover, some units have received equipment to be restaffed. I remind you that when the occupiers were preparing to flee from the right bank, there were clear signs of this. Despite sending partially mobilized units to this location, which I regularly reported on and which were nothing more than a cover for retreating regulars. Even when almost everyone was talking about some kind of trap the enemy was preparing, I emphasized that they couldn't set any trap, given the processes that were going on the right bank. But, now I can't say the same about the left bank, they're not getting ready to run. At least not yet. The fact is that on the left bank the Russian forces are simultaneously in relative safety, but at the same time as on a volcano. This paradox is due to the fact that the occupants are protected from a counterattack by the AFU by a natural barrier, the Dnieper River, through which it is fraught and unprofitable to counterattack. But with such a natural line of defense and protection, the enemy is on the left bank as in the palm of their hand for Ukrainian artillery. And it is for this reason that some of their units were withdrawn beyond more than 20 kilometers from the Dnieper. But that's not all, because the logistics are loose. Let us imagine some activation of the AFU in Zaporizhia region. And if this intensification leads to deoccupation, for example, Novoalexeyevka and the exit of the Ukrainian armed forces to the administrative border of the temporarily occupied territory of Crimea, the left bank group will be in an interesting situation. In fact, for the Russian troops on the left bank, the risks of finding themselves in an operational encirclement, which will gradually narrow down to a tactical encirclement, immediately increase. This would mean a minimum of 25 to 30 groups in the encirclement. Russian command cannot afford such losses in the form of prisoners. Therefore, the withdrawal of the enemy forces from the left bank is quite possible, but only when there is a serious threat of cutting and fire control of the M17 and T-2202 routes. And this is possible only when the issue of liberation of Zaporizhia region will be solved, and not before. I noted recently that invader tank units continue to artisanally increase the protection of their main battle tanks, by placing reactive armor wherever possible, even if it makes no sense. But, a new video gives a general idea of the deliriousness of such enhancements. In particular, the Russian T-80BV was clad with the reactive armor Contact 1, and at the same time it was dismantled the infrared spotlight Luna, which was responsible for the illumination of targets at night. In other words, the originally mediocre capabilities of the tank to at least somehow manifest itself at night were replaced by a buildup of dynamic protection, which absolutely does not protect against modern means of destruction. Is this a professional and high-quality approach? No, it's not. It's panic and fear. If you want to keep up with Ukraine's progress towards victory in the ongoing war, then subscribe to my channel and turn on all notifications. Thanks for your support, and let's stay informed together.